What's up, everybody? Man,
Hey.
the last time we were together, we were doing a charity fundraiser. So
Yeah.
it's good to see everybody in the chat, and we're gonna say hi to people here in a minute. But we have the charity fundraiser that we need to celebrate. So I think the final total I saw was 15,875, which
Wow.
makes our total for the last 2 years over 31 grand raised for mental health. So that's awesome.
Yes.
And we are 3/4 of the way to 10K, which feels pretty cool. Subscribers, yeah.
Switching gears.
Sorry, I was talking about the money raised.
Yeah.
Now I'm switching, and yeah. So we're 7,500 subscribers, so that's worth celebrating. And yeah, it's just been really good. So
Yeah.
we're gonna kick the night off with a new acquisition here and warm our palates up for tonight. We've got Knob Creek 18. So it looks better when it's facing the light. Ooh, look at that.
That's beautiful.
Not so hot. Yeah, that's nice. Okay.
Hot or not?
Yeah. So, oh boy, that takes me back. So this is courtesy of James Farley here locally, tracking this one down for us. This is a bottle that I typically would not spend this much on it, but I wanted to get a special bottle, and
no, I felt like you were gonna elbow.
That was kind of a weak pop. All right, so let's pour a little bit of this. I got
like ever so slightly.
I got Knob Creek wax on the desk already. You guys know how that goes. But yeah, I'm excited to get into this. We've tried the 12 and 15, and I love the 12. The 15, not as big of a fan, but let's see what's up with the 18. We're going to raise our glasses to you guys. Thank you for being a part of this journey with us. Thank you for being a part of the fundraiser with us. I am shipping out the last of the things that I have to ship out in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I was waiting on some addresses. Everything else is to everybody. So super happy about that. And the money's headed over to Write Love on her arms. So cheers to you guys. Thank you for being a part of this with us. Cheers to you.
Cheers. Ooh. Sorry if you're on headphones.
Oh, this smells nice. Oh, yeah. So the problem I had with the 15 was that it was like a little bit bitter in the oak. Like the oak was just a little bit too tannic and forward. And I don't like a ton of oak. I like some, but I like it balanced.
Yeah, this is good. I'm getting some stinky feet vibes.
Yeah. Which you guys know is positive for her.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, the oak is there, but there's a nice fruity sweetness that's just sitting on top of it. And this is a fresh crack, but it's kind of leaning towards that little bit of like a cherry or black cherry that you get on some Knob Creeks.
Also, when you opened that bottle, you said that was a weak pop, and Greg Johnson called it your mom joke. Your mom's a weak pop.
Sick burn. I love it. All right. Yeah, this smells fantastic to me.
Right, let's drink it.
Let's go.
Oh, this is nice.
It's oaky.
It is.
I didn't really know what to expect.
But it's not bitter. It's
it's just very
dare
present.
I say smooth oak? I know people don't like that word, but it's what my brain tells me.
Yeah, the oak is very present and prominent. I saw some reviews that said it wasn't very oaky. I saw other reviews that said it was very oaky. To me, this thing is a whole lot more oak than I was expecting.
But there's some sweetness there in the back end.
Well, let me say this. There is a lot of sweetness involved too, and it's going to take a second sip because that was our first sip of the day. But
I'm doing it right now.
With this stuff, if I had seen 0 reviews on it, I would expect this amount of oak. But then I saw some reviews that said it wasn't very oak forward, so I was thinking I wasn't going to get this amount of oak. This is exactly what I expected out of a Knob Creek 18.
Yeah. And as per usual, I'm getting more oak on the second sip, but it's still not very bitter, which I appreciate. So that's good. Mm-hmm. It's good. This is really good.
I would say it is a little, for 100 proof, it's got a lot of flavor, but it is thin on the palate. Like it doesn't have a lot of body. Yeah. The finish does stick around, but it just doesn't have a lot of body on the palate. It doesn't have a lot of viscosity sticking to the mouth. And, for the price point, $200, $160 to $200. Most stores around here are selling it for $200. That's a lot to ask for something that doesn't have a lot of viscosity, but it is 18 years old. That's pretty cool. So, anyways, cool pour to start the night. Good palate warm up. We got some fun stuff to sip tonight with Nick from Found North. But before we get into that, we want to say hi to people in chat, and we have to thank our patrons that are new for this month and last month because we didn't do it on the charity live stream because we had charity business to handle. So we want to thank JB Bourbon for jumping on up to the Whiskey with Friends tier, which is the most fun we have. We're doing tomorrow night. We're doing a community sample swap where a bunch of people have traded around samples, and we're all going to do a bunch of blind samples tomorrow night.
Mama P's in the house.
What's up, Mama P? Good to see you. We've got Joseph P. Trentone. Maybe nailed it.
Maybe not.
In our whiskey enthusiast tier, we've got Joel Gross, Herb Riedel, Tim F. Fopiano, and then Derek Sutton, John Fluff, Robert Bryant, Josh Ellis, Scott Evans. Josh Ellis was a skateboarder. Not that Josh Ellis.
Oh, that was the name.
Josh Ellis was the name of a skateboarder back when I used to be a skater boy back in high school. And then in our community, and then in my community tier, we've got Ben Cribbs, Denny RL, Eric Duche. I hope that's how his last name is pronounced. Because if it's not, he needs to change it to that pronunciation.
Doucette. I knew
Doucette. Doucette's work.
I knew a Travis Doucette in college.
That works. We've got Stanley Wagner Jr., the mash bill himself, Ron Powell, and Jose Atney. So thank you guys for supporting the channel, the colloquial guys. I think all these are guys though, but thank you guys for supporting the channel. Thank you for being a part. And let's thank some people in chat. Let's scroll to the top and say hi to some people. All right,
we have got,
Is that all our business? Charity, patrons, and raising a glass to warm our palates up.
Got WJK and Kathy Huey and Greg Johnson. Hey guys, our faithfuls.
Man,
got
you guys are
Joe
reliable.
Carter. I think I saw Jess Carter too, maybe on their separate accounts, or maybe I just was seeing things.
We've got Roscoe. What's up, man?
Roscoe's here. We've got Paula. Paula's here. Hey, Paula. Wildlife and Whiskey. Brian Miller. Hey, guys. Scott.
Nice.
Wow. I'm glad everyone's here. Troy and Lisa Toole are here. Mike James.
What's up, man?
Aaron Owens. Kim is here. Richard White. Velther's here. Yeah, Jess Carter's here. I saw her. I knew I did. Saucy Shane. We got Mark S.
What's up, Mark?
We got all kinds of people here. Thank you guys for coming and for joining us. And I think It's Bourbon Night still going on. So I know we may have some latecomers.
Yeah.
Their live stream might still be happening at the moment.
That's what usually happens is people are over there and then they bounce over here when they're done. Right. So
we got Bev Porter, as we've already established.
But she's worth shouting out twice.
She is.
We got Robert Kaser. What's up, man? Mark Boyer's in the house. Paul P. What is up? And we got Scotty in here. Scott says, cheers. Let me see your peanut. So that's an inside reference for anybody who didn't catch it. We did our first barrel pick along with Scott and Jason of the Mash and Journey Whiskey Club. And it was a virtual pick that we did over on Scott's channel, and it was a Blue Note pick. So we have some Memphis ties, Aaron especially, and so we thought that was a pretty cool pick to be able to do. And the pick that we ended up going with was by far the best. I'm actually still weeks later thinking about how I want bottles of that pick, and it's just such a good sipper. Yeah. And so the way it worked out was we all had our notes, and then Jason was saying that he was getting a little peanut on it. So Aaron went and got.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that, man. So Aaron goes and gets a jar of peanut butter and brings it back and is smelling it. He kept saying he was getting some peanut on it or peanut butter. And I was like, peanut butter. And I was not quite. Because it wasn't nutty, really, but it was peanut butter creamy. And I was like, well, we've got peanut butter. Let me smell some peanut butter and see if after familiarizing myself, I can get it. Yeah. So there's a lull in the conversation. And Aaron looks at Jason and he goes, I can see your peanut. And Jason jumped up and ran off screen. He's like, oh no. So it was a good moment. And I'm sure the pick there's going to be something related to a sticker with that pick with that. We're going to try to keep it classy. You guys know how we do, but yeah, it's going to be fun. So we've got Beyond the Row in the house. Jamie's here. So James asks if we want a Titans update. No. Or if we want Titans updates. No, I think Josh is going to check the scores. Yeah, later. I'll check it at the end. Okay. I don't need to be distracted. So let's not run too long. We got a guest in waiting. So I want to tell you guys real quick before we bring Nick on, I want to tell you guys how I found out about Found North. So Found North is, I had never heard of them. And we had one of our patron community sample swap nights, like I was just talking about with JB Bourbon jumping up to the Whiskey with Friends tier. And you get paired up with a partner and you swap blind flights, and we all hop on a live stream together, and people get on screen on the stream.
Yes.
Boy, that is tricky.
It's all right. We're just getting started. I know. Man. The night is young.
So Joe Carter in the chat was paired up with us, and so we swapped with Joe and Jess, and the flight that we got was called Age and Wisdom. He named it Age and Wisdom. Mm-hmm. And I assumed it was a balance of either like older bourbons versus younger bourbons or whatever. I drank through this flight, and I had 2 pours that just blew me away. And the whole flight was great.
Yeah.
But 2 of the pours blew me away. And as we were doing the reveal, it's like, okay, there's a hitter. And then there's a 14.5-year Knob Creek pick in there. And then we got down to my top 2 from the flight. And you were, I think, running chat and not sipping too much that night. So yeah. I don't know that you even ranked it. But we got down to my top 2, and it turned out to be Found North Batch 3 in my second place, and then Found North Batch 4 in my first place. And I'm talking like this stuff just destroyed quality legacy distillery bottles. And I was like, Joe, what is this? And so Joe had to school me on what Found North was. And then through Joe and talking with Nick through email and stuff like that, we made some connections. And yeah, looking really forward to having him on, because the way that they do whiskey is unlike anybody else, I think, out there right now, at least that I know of. So I can't wait to talk to Nick about this and get you guys kind of caught up to speed on the Found North thing. So yeah, let's bring Nick in.
Let's bring him in. Hey.
What's up, man?
Hey.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Guys, I gotta tell you, I just love your guys' vibe. I like I've already been laughing on the backstage. It's so fun to watch you guys. I'm a big fan of your guys' show, and just being on, I'm really excited. I was like, oh man, this is gonna be a fun night. I'm gonna have a lot of fun with these guys.
Well, thank you. We're honored that you're here. So, and the fact that you actually even like us is bonus points.
Oh man, no, I'm glad you guys like our whiskey, because if you didn't, I'd be really bummed. It's a really good. This is a good vibe. I'm really digging this.
It's so funny, man. It's, and we'll get into it, but a lot of you guys, I mean, I think all you guys stuff is pretty much straight cask strength, whatever it comes out at, and so some of it's higher proof. I'm definitely the high proof fiend between the two of us. Erin has, like, sometimes things hit her sideways in blinds if they're high proof,
if they're unexpected, or sharp in any way. I think,
But it's like, I just remember sipping through that first time, and I was like, man, what in the world are these two? Because I could tell that they were really good, but there was just something a little different. And I was like, these are so good, Joe. What are these? And so he told me, and I had to get the education. I think on that stream, before we signed off, there was multiple people who went online, found batch 3 and 4, and ordered them.
One.
Yeah,
I remember that one. Yeah, people were buying it online.
Yeah, and that was just based on how much I was raving about it in the live stream, because I'm sitting here tasting it blind. And I'm like, man, this stuff right here, wow. So
blind tastings are awesome, right? Because we do blind tastings all the time. We actually blind taste when we're making blends, because you get so caught up in making the same thing for weeks, right? You're tweaking it, you're making the same thing, that you get kind of unfamiliar with how other whiskeys taste. And you get in a situation where you're like, I think this is good. You're like I'm pretty sure that, but I've been only drinking this for so long now. And we'll actually blind taste each other on our own whiskey, make sure we can identify it, and make sure it still holds up against other whiskeys that we really like and respect. So we're all about the blind tastings. I'm delighted that's how you found us, because when we launched this thing, we knew that high age statements would get attention. That it's just a fact of the industry. But we really were hoping that, people would kind of get past that and taste it and really love it. So it's wonderful to hear somebody who had no idea that these, have the big age statement and really were like, wow, this is awesome, because that's really what we're hoping for, right? I mean, you want people to like the whiskey for the whiskey.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's true.
So, I mean, I think talking about why you started this is a great place, like start at the start, and we can go ahead and start with batch 3. Okay. So we have batch 3 and 4, as well as the single barrel release that just came out and sold out in most outlets in half an hour or something?
No, so we actually did that only online. So we can't, we don't have our own distillery, so we can't do our own store picks, which is a bummer because like the pilgrimage to Kentucky to do store picks is like it's like an experience you got to have if you're really in love with whiskey, and it's like, oh man, we don't have a place where people can come in and find something limited edition. So the way we did it was we sort of did an e-com only release, which was our first single barrel, and you sort of, we only sent the link out to people who are on our mailing list, which is something we'll do again in the future. And it's kind of just like a tip of the hat to people who've been following us and been kind of early to Found North and spread the love on it. It sold out in 12 minutes. It was like,
I knew it was 30 or under. I didn't realize it was just 12. So.
It was fast. Yeah, we upset a few folks, and we felt bad. I mean, honestly, it was like we had people literally say like, "Oh yeah, I set my alarm. I like casually went upstairs. I had something to do. I turned on my computer and I got the sold out email." It's like,
man,
sorry. But hey, it's good. It's good, but our next one's going to be a bigger format barrel, so hopefully we'll be in better shape.
And then this may be, I don't know if this is breaking news or not. I've not seen anybody talk about batch 5 or 6 other than the fact that they're coming, but we're going to be sipping those tonight. So
yeah, the official launch when we announce it will be this week. So you guys are getting kind of early to the game on this, which is pretty fun.
Oh wow! All right, well, be ready, guys, if you like what we said.
Exactly.
All right, but let's go ahead and get into batch 3 here together, and then I would love. Well, let's just get into this, and you know what? Cheers, man.
Yeah.
Cheers. Thanks for having me on. Yeah.
Oh man,
this smells like syrup and earth, which is great in my book.
Yeah, this I mean, honestly, batch 3 is representative of why we wanted to create Found North and why we want to make whiskey like this. Our feeling was, so all our whiskey's from Canada, and our feeling was, on one hand, we've seen the Canadians making Canadian whiskey the way they've made it for a long time, and it's always lower proof, not always, but it's often lower proof. It's often chill filtered. They add caramel coloring, and it tends to be a bit of a diluted flavor, even if it's not diluted. They really, like, when we make our whiskey and we pour it for the distilleries that we're sourcing the whiskey from, they're always just like, this would be really interesting at 80, and we're like, well, we really like it at 110, and then on the other hand, we've seen a lot of American-based brands that are launching whiskeys that are Canadian, whether they're being kind of upfront about it or not. But they're treating the distilleries in Canada like it's MGP. They go up, they buy a lot of whiskey, they bottle it. And Canadian whiskey, the fundamental difference between Canadian and American whiskey is that Canadian is designed to be blended. They do 100% grains, right? So they're doing like 100% corn, 100% rye, 100% wheat, 100% barley. And then they blend it, they ferment it, distill it, age it, and then they blend it at the end. And so their whole mentality is like, create the paints for a palette and then let the blender sort of paint the picture, right? That's like their mindset. And so if you just take one paint and you make that into your whole picture, it really isn't taking advantage of what's so exciting about Canadian whiskey. And so our attitude was like, there's a space in between here where we use Canadian the way it's really intended to be used, which is blended. But we make it in a style that's much more conducive to Josh's palate, right? I mean, like that's
I really like it too.
Hitting these and Aaron's palate. Let's go. So just and frankly, our palate. We're serious, bourbon and rye guys. Like that's what we love. But it's hard to get access to, it's hard to get access to really good sources of American whiskey right now, particularly if you're a new brand at a reasonable price. And to sort of find the components in here range from 17 to 25 years old. And to be able to source that, blend it to exactly how we want it, and have a lot of control over the sort of final flavor palette, and have it at a relatively reasonable price. I mean, it's just like, it's too exciting.
That's cool.
And that's why we made this. And I think, you know, Josh, you said sort of right off the bat, you said, you know, it tasted good, but it tasted a little different. That's really exciting for us. Like, we don't want to be smack dab in the middle of what everything else tastes like. We don't want to be so sort of far reaching that it's not familiar and it has no sort of sense of reference or sense of place. But we do want it to be on that kind of edge of the map a little bit, where you're like, oh, cool, I like this. It's familiar. It has notes that I really love, but it's a different take on this style that I like. And that's the gist of why we started this company, honestly.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
And I have to reiterate, because I don't want anybody in chat to miss it in case they did, because you said it, but it's such a cool concept for a whiskey. Like, you guys are a whiskey nerd whiskey company, because
Yes.
like, for instance, first off, I mean, just separate and apart from being that, like, the sample game with the wax tops and everything,
strong. You're
killing it. But like, for instance, okay, I'm looking right now at batch 3, age 17 years at a minimum, and we've got grain 60. You look at it, it looks like a rye mash bill. 64% rye, 32% corn, 4% barley. And in our brains, what that means is that was the mash bill, the grain bill in the beginning, and it was aged, but that was 100% rye that went through the whole process and aged, separate and apart from the rye, 100% corn, and then separate and apart 100% barley. And then you guys take those 100% of each and you work the blend to taste. So you have a finer level of control over the final product than just putting a mash bill together, putting it in a barrel, and letting whatever comes out. And there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, we all love that as well. But when I learned that about you guys doing that, it's just, there's like this nerdy level of craftsmanship.
Excited you so much.
Yeah. And the word that kept coming to my mind was craftsmanship. Like, you guys are crafting the final product, so you can actually dial it in to your flavor preferences for that product, which to me, if I'm spending, 120, 140, whatever on a bottle, I feel a lot better knowing that it's been a well-crafted product and I'm not just taking a flyer on something that may or may not be good,
I really appreciate that. Yeah, we it was funny when we worked the first distillery we worked with, and I would say them if I could. But when we worked with the first distillery we worked with, the way they were used to working with new brands and brand owners was, we'll create the blend, we'll create 3 blends and we'll send them to you and you pick which one becomes your product. And we were like, what? No, I mean, no. You send us the components, we'll blend them, we'll buy what we want, and then we'll direct you to create that blend. And the wildest thing was, the first blends they sent us were like 10 percentage points away from each other. So like, imagine 80% rye, 20% corn, 70% rye, 30% corn. So it tastes like 3 fundamentally different whiskeys. We were like, what? This is just shoe shopping for 3 different pairs of shoes, and that's it. We can't design them. We can't. It was bizarre, and it was so much fun to sort of work with them. They were really flexible. They were like, oh, okay, you want to do it this way? It's not how we do it, but go ahead. And they actually helped us a lot when we were first getting started, because it was just different to work with Canadian whiskey. It was different to work with components that didn't taste like finished whiskeys, right? Like it's just so, because you're so used to tasting something and going, oh, this is complete, this is great, it has this, it has that, and this is like, okay, this component has this incredible flavor. How will it combine with this that's completely different and has these other notes? It's been an absolute journey. I think it's been one of the most fun things I've ever done in my life. So yeah, it's been wild.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. Real quick, I want to shout out 4-Leaf Whiskey in the chat. Kathy Graves is here. She had to iron Joe's underwear and lay out his PJs for the night. That's hilarious.
Is that what she said? I missed that. Oh, I missed that.
It's right at the top.
Oh, I'm late to the party. I had to iron Joe's underwear.
And we've got Bruzel in the chat. Bruzel's going to be the first bourbon channel to 100,000 subscribers, man.
What?
He's got like 10 or 15,000 more every time I look at his channel. Good grief. Bruzel, you're killing it, man.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to circle back to what you said real quick on batch 3 before we move on to batch 4, saying how you liked how I said there was something a little different about it. And even now, as I'm revisiting it and nosing it and tasting it, it is so reminiscent of like a nicely high proofed Kentucky rye, because you get the rye spice, but then you get it's almost like a rye whiskey that's just wrapped up in a caramel blanket. Like there's just this heavy layer of caramel.
That's a very pretty visual I'm getting right now.
And when I think about a rye that's distinctly rye but has some caramel sweetness, I think about Kentucky ryes. But sometimes in blinds, those will trick me as a bourbon. Whereas the rye spice, like rye flavor, stays intact. It just gets that nice dose of caramel sweetness. I'm assuming from the corn in the mash bill, or the blended in. And yeah, man, it's just fantastic.
It's really good.
Okay, so you're spot on, because so when we get to the single barrel drinks a little bit like it's a similar grain ratio, but it drinks a little bit more like a bourbon. And the thing that's so distinctive about bourbon, of course, is like corn in new wood, right? It's that caramelization effect that happens from new wood. And there's actually no new American oak in this blend. We use a lot of new American oak in our blends, and this one just happens to not have it. And what's exciting about that is, you were talking about the Knob Creek before we came on here, and you guys were really honed in on having nice wood without that kind of bitter astringency that you get at the end of typically like really old whiskeys, often that are in new oak, right? And you can imagine why. You spend 18 years in Kentucky in new oak, you're gonna get a little bit of that kind of pencil shaving in the back end. And when we're working with these older ryes, particularly, this has a bunch of Hungarian oak influence, which we're obsessed with Hungarian oak because it throws a lot of wood sugar without as much tannin. You end up getting those caramel notes. You end up getting a lot of actually like fruit and florality from the spice. It develops the rye spice incredibly, but you don't end up getting that kind of oaky tannic finish at the end. And that was a treat with working with Canadian whiskeys, because it's not as restrictive with what you have to age it in. And so that really that's like one of our absolute favorite parts about batch 3.
Yeah. And I think one of the cool, and we'll get batch 4 poured up here while we're talking about this on the tail end, but like I didn't even think about, I mean, we're sitting here hanging out talking and stuff. So, it's hard to get into every nuance, but, in my mind, you start talking about the wood and I'm like, oh yeah, it's there, but it's just, it's laced in and blended in so nicely that it doesn't really jump out at you. It's not tannic. The rye spice is there, it's present, but it's not overwhelming, or it's not even prickly. Like it's displayed so nicely. And I just really like that. That's when I was like, man, this company's about some craftsmanship.
It's up your alley, Josh.
Oh man, that's awesome. I appreciate it. No, I think it's interesting because a lot of times I feel like people think that whiskey is grain plus wood equals whiskey, right? And I think a lot of the really hot weather climate whiskeys have reinforced a slight misconception, because it's like, oh, well, if it's aged in Taiwan or Texas or Israel for 2 years, it's like aging it for 6 years here or 8 years here. And what that negates is the influence of actual oxygen right? One of the, not to get too geeky, but one of the really cool things that happens with wood is one of the reasons we char the inside of the barrel is because the charcoal makes the oxygen much more reactive. It basically polarizes the oxygen and makes it react with the whiskey way more. And that's just about time. That's not just what you're taking from the wood. That's actually the time in the barrel. And so you can get this incredible development of flavor in a less sort of oak concentrated cask, right? Which is like essentially that's a friendly way of saying a refill cask. But basically, if you're using a cask that isn't necessarily brand new oak, you actually are still getting a lot out of the maturation without getting as much of the oak influence.
Yeah,
that's cool.
And anybody if you're just strictly in the bourbon world, then that might seem a little foreign. But if you dabble in Scotch or Irish or whatever, and you're dealing with these, second fill cask or first fill or whatever, like you're dealing with other things, and you can see how the wood can impart itself in such a more delicate way over time.
Before we move on to batch 4, I want to point out that Joe said he was getting tons of really dark honey on batch 3.
I can see that.
And I was we didn't have time, but I got like honeycomb on it.
Yeah.
On the nose. So I wanted to point that out. I liked that a lot.
So let's go ahead and work into batch 4 here. And so now we're switching gears, which the pattern you guys had with batch 1 and 2, as I found out about you guys, I went back and looked and I was like, what's up with batch 1 and 2? So batch 1 was more of a rye base, batch 2 more of a corn base. You guys kept the same pattern with 3 and 4, where 3 was more of a rye base. 4 is more of a corn base, 80% corn, 19% rye, 1% barley. Again, the Hungarian oak. And I love you explaining why you guys like to use that. But as we get into batch 4 here, and I want to get a little bit.
It smells strong.
Yeah. So this was my favorite, and this
smells like you would like it.
Yeah. So for me, you talked about how the Canadian whiskey process works, and I guess let's clear the air too. You guys use Canadian whiskey. You're not located in Canada. You're located here in the U.S., so people should know that. But when you deal with these Canadian blends where things just get kind of thrown together and then watered down to Kingdom Come, it's like, okay, that's the bad side, right? Let's water it down. Let's add the flavorings and stuff. And unfortunately, the system that Canadian whiskey operates under allows that. And that's the negative side of it, where I think it's super smart from a nerdy person standpoint, is that you guys stepped in and took all those things that make all those negatives, you flipped them on their head and made them positives. And now you're using the system to the advantage to make some, frankly, really dang good whiskey. So, I mean, I just think that is super, super smart.
I'm going to show this because I'm in charge of chat. JG said honeycomb in grass on pavement with a hint of shoe gum. That is the tasting note.
That's an Aaron tasting note, if there ever was one. Yeah.
I like that note.
Dude, this batch 4 smells so good. As low of a rye content as it has, 19%, I still get that. We did a blind with it, and I thought it might have been a rye, but it was reminding me. I mean, it's got the sweetness there. It's got the the rye's present, so it's dynamic.
Is it higher proof than the last one?
Yeah, this is a big boy.
I can tell.
Yeah, this is 124.8.
Oh, okay.
Right in my wheelhouse.
Yes. Yeah. So one quick thing is we didn't write the word mash bill on there for 2 reasons. One, because it wasn't done at the mashing level, but also mash bill can be a little confusing in the sense that, well, we're used to it in the US. So it basically has been standardized. And so you sort of expect, all right, this percentage of rye is going to taste this rye heavy, right? That obviously. The kicker here is when you do a mash bill in the US, let's say you do 75 corn, 20% rye, 5% malted barley. The corn has a much higher concentration of starch and therefore a much higher concentration of sugar, which means you get more alcohol from it than you do the rye, right? So one thing that's interesting here is we're talking about liquid ratios. So if this were if we got this liquid ratio out of a mash bill, it would actually be more like a 70-30 or even like a 65-35. It would be a much higher concentration of rye in the mash bill to get this much liquid. Does that make sense? Because corn has about twice as much sugar content eventually than rye does. And that actually, that's one of the reasons why these sort of corn heavy grain ratios that we do show the rye off so much. It's quite a bit of fun.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah, so this thing right here, sipping on 4, especially coming off of 3, it's obviously proofier. It's got more punch and more staying power. Like I took a drink a minute and a half ago, and it's still just lingering around,
hanging out.
Sits.
It does, man. And I've only tried 3 and 4, so it's going to be really interesting to get into the rest. But one thing I've noticed, and us with like our Patron community doing a bunch of blind flights with them and trading samples where we're all drinking the same thing, it's wild. Like you'll get, we'll have 16 people all doing a flight together and we're all drinking the exact same thing. You've got half of the people getting certain notes and then the other half of the people getting completely different notes.
Yeah.
But the thing that stays consistent to me from, sip to sip and day to day tends to be the experience for the most part. So what I like about 3 and 4 and what really just blew me away about them in the beginning when I tried them blind was the overall experience that you get. So I like oily, viscous pours. I like pours that hit the palate and they're nice and sweet and approachable up front. Like they don't sting as soon as they hit the tip of your tongue, but then they just swell up with flavor mid palate and then they stick around for a long time on the finish. That is the experience that I want every pour to be.
Yeah, you do.
It's what you get in a lot of the like more quote unquote desirable bottles. If people are looking for those, like your Buffalo Trace antique collections, like they're very good at doing that. But you get it in some single barrels here and there, but 3 and 4 do it. Like I call it like it's like riding a wave of flavor over your tongue. And the first time that ever happened to me was with a Japanese whiskey, and that opened my eyes to sipping neat. And I was like, oh man, I want that experience all the time.
Yeah.
And if I can get it, I'm pretty much as good as sold. So 3 and 4 did that for me.
It's so bad for me to ask because I should be focused on my own whiskey, but what was the Japanese whiskey?
So this was back when before I got up in the proof, and like I dabbled in like, I like Wild Turkey 101 and Buffalo Trace and Eagle Rare and all that, all the regular stuff. And like, those are fine, right? Like fine whiskeys. But I had Hibiki Harmony. Oh. And I was like, this is something different than all those other things I've been drinking.
And we had also not had Japanese whiskey really at all. And so that's a whole different
everything neat sipping had been on that kind of surface. Like, Eagle Rare was probably the quote unquote nicest, 10 years age statement. Yeah. I never messed with anything else. And I, even like McKenna 10 year and things, it's like that stuff is good and enjoyable for what it is. But when you can craft a whiskey that delivers that, I remember I described it like I felt like I was walking through a meadow and had walked out into a sunny open spot, and I felt the warmth of this. It's like there's like this experience of like just warmth and brightness on my palate.
Yeah. And we had just fairly recently started dating at that time, and I was like, this guy is weird.
Yeah. Oh man. No, I love that. I like, for me, the whiskey has to give that experience, has to give a experience to be really a special whiskey for me. Japanese whiskey has done that for me a lot, just as an aside. But I think when we are blending, I have to imagine that we spend a little bit more time on texture than most blenders. And the only reason I say that is because we blend at strength. A ton of blenders are bringing it down to 20% so that they can pick out all the different smells easier, which makes total sense, because when you dilute it and you get the ethanol down, it actually is easier to pick up any flaws and to pick up all these smells. But for me, I can't do it because I care so much about how it feels. I care so much about what that ride is. I really often will describe. I really want a whiskey that has a progression. That is really three-dimensional. That has space. Far too often, whiskey is described in flat terms. It has this flavor, this flavor, this flavor, and whiskey's totally three-dimensional, right? When you taste it, you can taste whether it coats your mouth. You can feel whether it's crackling down your palate. I am absolutely obsessed with batch 4, the way it sits on kind of the back of your tongue, and it's like the smallest little crab is just walking. You know what I mean? It's like giving your tongue a little massage. It is a really a very sensation-driven whiskey, more so than just it tastes good or it noses well. Oh God, when we get to batch 5, batch 5 makes my heart pound because it's like that. And when we made it, we had that experience of just, it has to be described by describing an experience more so than just listing out flavor notes. So I'm totally with you, man. You and I we need to hang out and just geek the hell out on whiskey. We could talk forever. I can sit with a whiskey and talk about, just tell the story that it's reciting to me right back. You know what I mean? Like,
and Aaron's in bed, and like 3 people are left in chat, me and you, and nerding out about the little things like that.
That's how it rolls. I go to bed, and Grandma has to get her sleep. So,
dude, it is, man. It's, flavor notes are great, and we like them as much as anybody, and they can explain, like, they can kind of give you an idea of what it's going to taste like. But if I say I get, caramel and chocolate and whatever on this glass right here, you may or may not get those. But if I feel like I can describe the experience as being like, this glass right here is sweet, it's dense, it's oily, I call it like a ball of flavor or a sphere of flavor, and it does it, man. It comes into your palate like a tidal wave, and it just washes over everything, and it lingers back there. And I freaking love that, man. I've adore batch 4.
When we made batch 4, it was in part a response to batch 2. So we didn't know we were going to make these sort of corn dominant whiskeys. We thought that there was really an obvious need for more aged rye, right? Like, we were like, aged rye, there's just not enough of it. It's such a, it's just it's such a fun experience. And so when we made batch 1, we finished it and we were like, all right, we need to make batch 2. Batch 2 is going to be another rye. And we started blending it, and we had this experience where we were like, all right, we really like it at about 70-30. And then we're like, well, let's try it at, 60-40. And we're like, damn, that's good. And then we tried it 50-50, and we were like, we need to have a meeting, like, we're no longer just a rye company. And we kept going. And we were just like, is anybody going to buy this? Like, we knew if people tasted it, we felt like they're going to like it. But we were like, are people going to buy a cask strength, non-nameable whiskey, right? It's not a bourbon. It's not it really isn't a Canadian rye. It doesn't fit into any category. Well, people actually drink this stuff, and people loved batch 2. And batch 2 was this just like explosion of flavor. And with batch 4, we wanted to get into what we did with batch 2, but stretch it out. I mean, really, like, we were like, we want this thing to linger. We want it to have a longer feel to it, a longer finish to it, tell it just a longer story. And so it's really fun to hear feedback of people saying, like, man, I drank batch 4 last night and I woke up and I could still taste it. That's what we were going for.
Yeah, that's so cool, man. It's cool to know that you guys are crafting for that, because it comes across on this end. And it's, it's not that other distilleries, when they're blending, like that Knob Creek 18, that's not a single barrel. That was a blended product. So they blended it, they proofed it. You know, I mean, Knob Creek, pretty much, it's either going to be 100 or 120, or, you know, on a very rare occasion, something off of one of those. So, you know, they went with 100 on that. But they're still working with their barrels that matured for that amount of time, that fit, you know, and they're trying to get the flavor profile right. And maybe that's the experience they did want. Maybe they kind of wanted that not too heavy on the palate experience. You know, they didn't want a lot of body, but I think that's where, and I think as we get into the single barrel, it'd be a really good time to kind of backtrack a little bit. And just because, first off, I know y'all's background, and it's clear that you're absolutely crazy for even starting a whiskey company in the first place. Like, it's not easy work, right? And like you just spoke to it about talking, like, we're going to make this product. It's going to cost what it's going to cost. We know it's going to be good, but who in the world's going to buy this? Like, you guys went out on a limb to do that, which takes a certain level of craziness. But like, I would love, and I want the chat to know, like, how you got into whiskey in the first place, and then what in the world possessed you to be like, you know what, I'm just going to, you know, here we go. We're going to do a whiskey company.
Man, yeah. I mean, my brother and I co-founded the company, and we started a while back. I basically started in whiskey as a whiskey buyer for a chain of retailers in Massachusetts, and my attraction to whiskey was the time it took to make good whiskey. It's an inherently cool thing to see people who invest a lifetime in a project. And then to be able to, you know, it's a form of art that you can consume. And there's something I think really special about that. And I don't mean like you can consume television, you can consume music, but when you listen to a great song, you can listen to it again, right? Like a great whiskey, there's that ephemerality, right? That nature of like, when it's done, it's done. And I, for some reason, have always felt that is like very symbolic of the beauty of life, which, you know, sounds kind of, you know, a little out there, but for me, like, I think that's something that's really special. And when anybody who's either picked a barrel or hunted down a whiskey that they've always wanted to try and find something that's really special for you, to identify moments in your life that are worthy of sharing it with this whiskey, or even have a whiskey that can be a defining moment in your life. How can you not want to make that? Like, if I don't know, to me, it just, it feels like it feels like something that was really always calling to me as soon as I started getting into whiskey. So that's the reason, you know, to get into it. The sort of impetus to make this whiskey, and to get into this whiskey was, whiskey is this big project, right? Like, everybody, it's 500 years old, right? The first record of whiskey being made was in, was it 1405 in the annals of Clonmacnoise in Ireland, where this guy, they literally are recording their chieftain dying from consuming too much whiskey. That's the first record. Great history, right? But you think about, like, this project has been going on for hundreds of years, and to be able to take a category and a consumer base, and just, even if you just move them 1 inch closer together, where they can be a little more familiar with each other, and you can have consumers who love American whiskey, who won't give Canadian whiskey a chance, go, shit, these guys are making something that's pretty good. I'm pretty interested in this. And if down the road Canadians are like, you know, maybe we should try a little more higher proof stuff, and maybe we should try doing this a little bit this way, and see how it goes, to be even a part of that is really cool if you believe in the whiskey project, which I do deeply.
Yeah, that's
cool.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
And we got to shout out Eric in the chat.
Yeah,
man, can't wait till you get back in town. We're gonna hang out.
Yeah.
I want you to go up a little bit, or right above. Stacy at Four Leaf Whiskey says Canadian whiskey is like Irish whiskey 5 years ago. People don't know about it yet, but it's going through a renaissance as well. And then if you go up just a little bit more in the chat, and somebody said something I wanted to highlight as well.
We also have a question.
Bullseye Fowl. Yeah, and if you guys have questions for Nick, drop them in the chat.
Yeah, well, I've got one that's fun.
Bullseye Fowl says, Wild Turkey 101 is literally one of the best bourbons for the money. Canadian whiskey has a long way to get a change of opinion. And I think, that's kind of speaking, I don't want to speak for Nick, but that was kind of to his point. It's like, okay, we're making this thing. We can't brand it as bourbon. We can't brand it as any specific thing. And you guys know how we do here on the channel. Everything is blind for the most part. So I'm super happy I found out about this blind, because if I were looking through and just saw the percentages, and the bottle's gorgeous, the branding is gorgeous, you guys have that taken care of. That's locked down. But still, I might say to myself, okay, Canadian whiskey, and I'm just being totally honest with you, like, Canadian whiskey, I don't really know if I want to, maybe if I had the extra money in the budget, if I saw a positive review somewhere, I might take a chance. But actually experiencing it myself, and then I absolutely love some of those 120 proof 14 and 15 year Knob Creek picks. Like, they're some of my favorite whiskey out there. And then just to have 3 and 4 just destroy it in a blind, and I'm like, what in the world is this?
What is this juju here?
I don't even know what's about, like, and I'm just so glad that was my exposure. And then again, learning about the craftsmanship, like we've been talking about here, and the passion you guys have for what you're doing. It's hard not to fall in love with the company if you're nerdy.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Erin. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, I want to get to this one question we have, because Stefan asked it a while ago. He was asking if you're going to offer, or do have plans to offer 100 proof or lower bottles for the non-proof hounds.
Yeah. So, Stefan, I appreciate it. I think one of the challenges that we have is, I do like some lower proof whiskeys. I don't like many below usually like 92. There are a lot of, I was a Scotch guy early on, and a lot of the good Scotches are at 46%, so 92 proof, and I like those. But we have such a challenge in terms of, we need to signal to American whiskey drinkers who are our market. We're not even available in Canada yet. We need to signal to American whiskey drinkers, we get what you want, right? And that's part of the reason why it's wax top. We make a real point to say, no additives, non-chill filtered. It's like, this is not your typical Canadian whiskey. We need to say that. And high proof says that. It just does, right? It is regardless of whether, it's as mass drinkable, because a lot of the lower proof stuff is not just about raising profit margins. It's about making it more approachable, which is reasonable. Not everybody drink, damn, batch 6 is 120. What are we? 128.2. Like, that's not,
nice.
My dad pours that and goes, what the hell are you guys doing? So it's like, it's not always the easiest thing, but we're trying to win over a whiskey drinker that has certain expectations for their whiskey. And for the time being, that has to be at proof, that has to be at a higher proof. I love that you brought up, what was it? Bullseye. Because this is, and actually, dang, where was the Irish whiskey comment? I want to give her credit as well. Stacey. Yeah. The absolute nuts thing about Canadian, and one of the reasons why it's going to be harder to sort of move the category, is we think of Irish whiskey as this exploding category, right? And they did, a couple of years ago, they did 6+ million 9-liter cases in the US. So that's a lot. That feels like a big number. Canadian whiskey was the number one selling whiskey by volume in the United States from 1865 until 2010, right?
Really?
Like in 2010,
wow.
in 2020, Canadian whiskey did 20 million 9-liter cases. They did almost 3 times as much as Irish. But it's all this, it's all this lower proof, this volume stuff that the Canadian industry has been absolutely crushing with, right? Like they're so successful. When we think of the scale of distilleries, we think, okay, the biggest distillery in the US is Heaven Hill, right? And they've got about 500,000 barrels aging at Heaven Hill. The biggest distillery in Canada is Hiram Walker. They have 1.3 million barrels aging. The Canadian industry is gigantic, and they crush, and they have absolutely no reason to move in this direction unless we can lead them by the nose and say, hey, there's a market for premium whiskey. You just need to do it this way. You just need to start listening to this customer base. And I think for us, one of the really interesting things about our team is I was a whiskey buyer. One of the other guys on our team was a whiskey buyer. And then one of the other guys on our team was a bartender and then a brand ambassador. We all have very customer facing backgrounds, and we've sold a lot of stuff that isn't our stuff, right? Yep. We've gone through the process of having to listen. When you're making a buying decision, you're not like, I think this is cool, so I'm buying it. You're going, I think my customers are going to like this, and you better be right because your job depends on it.
Yeah.
And so for us, that it was very natural to say, no, this is what people expect. It also happens to be what we like, but this is what people expect.
Yeah. So I will say, as we get into the single barrel here,
I just smelled it. Can I say it smells like straight up butterscotch?
Butterscotch. Yes.
That's what I'm getting.
Yeah, it is buttery on the nose.
Like, is it Werther's original? Is that the butterscotch?
Yeah, yes. I can get a Werther's on that. Yeah. So this is 66% rye, 30% corn, 4% barley. And again, anybody that's new in chat that wasn't here at the beginning, that's the 100% of each of those that are blended in the end.
It's the ratio, not the mash bill.
It's the ratio of all 100% distilled and aged grains. So with the background being, this is the question that begs to be asked right now, is with the background in buying, selling, bartending, all that stuff, anybody who's tried to blend whiskey at home on their own knows it is not easy. Like, there is absolutely zero chance you turn me loose with these 3 different 100% grain aged things.
Oh,
and I come out with anything
you'd make something so disgusting.
It would be, I mean, people would be running for the hills, man. How in the world did you guys obviously, you said you're whiskey enthusiast and you know what you wanted, but how hard was it for you to kind of get in there and start playing around with stuff and
finding ratios that work?
Turn out anything like this? Because that to me, just having tried home blending myself, it's tricky.
It's real. Yeah. It's definitely tricky. The single barrel was a really fun project in the sense there were 2 aspects of it that were really fun. The first was when you're blending, you're just you figure out how you want it to taste. It's to exact specification, right? You're like, all right, this is it. Mm-hmm. This is what I like. Blend it, bottle it. We're done. When you're picking a barrel, you can't roll it back to a month ago, right? You can't just be like, you know what? I like this how it was a month ago. Let's go. And you don't know where it's going in a month, So it's like there's this constant yes, now or no wait decision, right? It's a slightly different decision-making process. And so the way we made our single barrel program was, and this gets a little dicey with the word single barrel, but we do our best here. But basically, we created a blend and then recast it into single barrels and then further matured it. Because if you took one of these 100% grains and you said, here's my single barrel, it wouldn't taste right. They're not finished whiskeys. Mm-hmm. Moreover, we're a blending company. So how do we create a single barrel program? So in December of last year, we blended 12-year-old rye with 19-year-old rye and 21-year-old corn. We blended that together, and then we recast it into all of these different barrels. And the kicker is whenever you recast something, you're restarting the wood extraction process. So much of the wood extraction happens right at the beginning. When you create a blend that you're going to put into new wood or all these different wood types, you don't want it to have a finished wood profile. Quite the opposite. You want it to have room to sort of grow into itself. And that was terrifying because we weren't making a whiskey that was like, hey, it's done. This is exactly what I like. We were making a whiskey going, okay, I would really love this if it turns into this, right? I will really love this if the wood reacts the right way. This happened to be a level 3 char New American Oak barrel. That was one of the barrel types we picked. And we were really drawn to this particular barrel to be our barrel number 1. But we didn't know when to pull it. And at a certain point, it transitioned into that butterscotch note. For me, it was toasted marshmallow. It suddenly just was like a toasted marshmallow. It tasted like a s'more. And I was like, this is so identifiable. It's so individual, which is the whole point of a single barrel, right? Is to create this like unique expression that I thought it was really representative of what we wanted our sort of single barrel to be.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And you get it, man. Like the wood influence on it is noticeably like where it's kind of laced in and woven in 3 and 4. You get into the single barrel and it is there. Like you pick it up for sure.
Yeah.
You can see how this one could be mistaken for a bourbon though, right?
Oh yeah.
It's so much more. Yeah.
I'm like, I would not think that rye was the dominant portion of this blend at all.
Not at all.
And I will say this is 109.4 proof, whereas we're coming off of batch 4, which is 124.8 proof.
This has flavor for days.
Oh yeah. So because you're dealing with the individual components of the blend that then get put together and then put in that second barrel that has a char, like you're getting a little bit of like that toasting profile or that second barreling, like a double oak type of profile.
Like a double oak. Yeah.
So it is very sweet, but not like Erin is super sensitive to super sweet whiskey. She is not on board with super sweet whiskey at all. She likes sweetness if it's tempered, not running all over the place.
I don't want to feel like I get a sugar crash. Like I know there's already the alcohol involved.
Integrated.
One thing. Yeah.
If it just tastes like Sweet and Low, when it just has that kind of confectionery artificial sugar taste, I don't like that either. It needs to be layered into something that gives it more of an identifiable texture and more of an identifiable taste. I'm totally with you.
Yeah, because if I wanted that taste, I'd drink a Coke or something like not whiskey.
Well, and she said she's a huge rye fan.
I am.
I'm more of the sweet bourbon guy. She's more of like the earthy rye girl. So, that's like the dynamic that we have. And if you can find a whiskey that makes both of us happy, then it's probably doing something pretty good. And it's probably pretty balanced, pretty well crafted, or it's a really good single barrel or something like that. We line up on some of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
This to me is like, I'm going to throw this out there. But like she absolutely loves Sagamore Double Oak Dry. And this kind of has some of that like mapliness, but it's like jacked way up. Like it's like a cask strength version of that. Although I've heard, I won't, but I've watched some other streams that said they got to try it at cask strength, the Sagamore Rye, and they're like, it's probably good at the proof it's at, and that's a testament to saying, that kind of speaks to what you were saying is like Sagamore puts it where they put it, because that's what works for that whiskey. Whereas you're saying like, we could water it down and find, individual flavor notes or flaws if they're there or whatever, but we're going to drink it like this. So let's blend it.
Let's put it there
like this, let's start where we're going to end up. So this is good,
I'm
man.
getting like a slight coffee note at the very end, which I love. Like it's I don't know what it is. Like it's like a s'mores with like chocolate that has coffee in it.
So do you ever have affogato?
Oh, what now?
Do you ever have affogato? Do you ever put like espresso on ice cream?
No. That sounds amazing though. I would love to do that. Okay. That could be this.
I've ice cream with my coffee every morning. There's vanilla ice cream goes with everything. I don't know. I'd put vanilla ice cream literally on everything. I put a little in my coffee and then I give a little to the dogs, and that's my ritual. They get it.
So here's what I'm curious about. Knowing your profile and what you like of 3-4 in the single barrel, where are you placing them?
I would probably have 3 more as like when I would reach for more often, just because it's pretty. I could drink that at any
point in time,
any day. And then probably the single barrel would be next. And then 4 when I would want that powerfulness.
Yeah. And for me, 4 is just so outstanding. And then the single barrel's not far behind on its heels. But then me being, I'm not huge on rye, although I'm appreciating it more and more over time. But 3 is, I mean, it's pretty close behind the single barrel. Like, they're all very, very good, which is, again, I mean, I keep saying it, but the blending, the ability to craft the whiskey, the craftsmanship behind the final product doesn't, like, I'm a huge we're both big Wild Turkey fans, but like, and I really like Russell's picks, and I'll buy every one I get a chance to, but I know they're not all going to be great because they're all single barrels and you're going to get let down sometimes, you know? So
Also,
I'm a huge Wild Turkey fan. I love Wild Turkey. Yeah, I love the turkey.
So good.
I know Josh mentioned it earlier, guys, in the chat, but if you all have any questions, pop them in the chat, and then I will star them and we'll come back to them later. So if you have any questions for Nick, pop them in the chat and we'll get to them as soon as we can. So don't be afraid. He won't bite. You can ask questions.
Also, I saw Greg Johnson in the chat just say balsamic with vanilla ice cream, and I'm literally going to do that after this is over. I've got to try that. That is a fascinating combination, just for it.
And JB Bourbon says vanilla is the only flavor that matters. And honestly, like, that's a big reason why I'm a fan of some of the bourbons I'm a fan of, because they are so vanilla forward. Like, I love it when I can get that vanilla note. So going into, based on what you said after drinking 4, I'm super excited to get into batch 5. So this is aged 8 years. It's a blend of 21 and 8-year whiskey, 73% corn, 27% wheat, 116.2 proof. I'm very interested in this. So here we go. I mean, these are coming new to market.
Brand new. Yes.
So
all right,
let's get into it, man.
Clear my palate really well so I can start fresh.
Yeah, please clear your palate for this one. This particularly because this whiskey is about the texture. So basically we took an 8-year-old wheat component, which made up 27% of the blend, and we blended it with a 21-year corn component that spent 13 years in ex-bourbon, then was transferred to New Oak for 9 years. And so it's 73% 21-year whiskey, 27% 8-year-old whiskey, which of course makes it an 8-year age statement. But you'll honestly, like, if you look at our whiskeys, we released 2 16 years, 2 17 years, an 18-year, and an 8-year. We wouldn't release the 8-year if the 8-year wasn't on point, right? Like, there's no way. Yeah. But the wheat component in and of itself was just absolutely spectacular. And this was just about, like, carefully setting it into a place where it could shine. It was really fun.
So that's actually what I was interested in. Like, I got imagine, 100% corn tastes like it tastes, 100% rye tastes like it tastes, 100% barley, malted barley. We all kind of know what that is if you've dabbled in, other whiskeys, but 100% wheat, like, by itself, what is that like when you got to taste it for the first time?
An explosion of it's literally like fireworks of peppermint and cream, like honestly, like Irish butter. You know how Irish butter has a little bit of a tang to it, like little, like the cream has just like that's what it tastes like. It's freaking spectacular.
I can smell the tang.
So this nose to me is the first thing I smelled it. The first word that came to mind when I smelled it was just beautiful. Like, it smells.
That's what you say when you look in the mirror too.
It smells like velvet feels.
Smells like velvet. We'll just say that.
Smells like velvet.
No, because sometimes velvet can be, depending on the velvet and the scene and the setting, velvet can get kind of funky if
I don't know.
people have been sitting on it and stuff like
Our
that.
velvet couch feels nice.
That does.
That feels nice.
Yeah. This just smells. It just smells beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm excited.
Sweet.
I'm excited for you to taste it.
All right, let's get into it.
I want to see you taste it, just because I'm interested in seeing what your reaction is.
And there's the wave. Yeah, man. That's like a wave in slow motion.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, you go.
This is more, I expected it to be like, pow, I'm going to punch you in the face off of the nose. But it is like, wow, this is nice.
Yeah.
I could drink this.
Elegant. It's 116 proof. It is the
It's-
scariest 116 proof
Yeah,
that's
that's
ever existed. You
Steph,
just, you could drink like a gallon of this and not have a clue until you were on the floor. It is
And
really
that's
scary.
dangerous. Yeah.
It's really scary. I've accidentally had too much of this to drink twice already.
Yeah. I could see how that would happen.
This is for Stefan in the chat.
Yeah.
You don't want to be blown away by proof. This is for you right
It
here.
definitely drinks under proof in like the best way.
In the best way.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
drinks under its proof, but has texture still, right?
Yeah.
It still has mouth coating. It's round. It's creamy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, creamy is a really good word for it. Like it to me, I get that wave of like batch 4 hits the palate, swells up with flavor, hits the back of the palate. It's very
batch 4 tastes like it smells.
Batch 4 feels like it's expanding inside of your mouth to a space that's larger than your mouth actually has. Whereas this just kind of occupies all the space. It rolls into the back of the palate, but it does it in like a slow motion way. Like it hits the front of the palate, swells up, and then it just falls to the back.
It's very slow.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I like you have so many different sensory experiences on your palate, right? You get like tingly sweetness on the front of your palate, you get sort of tannins on the side, you get that kind of crackle that goes through the mid palate. Really good whiskey has texture on the roof of your palate, right? It has like enough viscosity and enough weight where you can kind of feel like it's like slick on the top of your palate. And then of course, if it's got great texture and viscosity and weight to it, it will steadily kind of seep into your, life force, right? It just kind of like it just this whiskey, when we made it, we just the crazy thing was we made this last year. We made this almost 16 months ago and decided to wait on it because we had kept tasting the wheater and it kept getting better. The wheat just kept getting better and better. And we were like, we need to match it with the perfect corn whiskey so that because corn has such oiliness and viscosity that when they were paired together, it started to take all that we liked from the wheat and just spread it out. Just like it wasn't just a one trick pony. It wasn't just hitting one of those regions with texture. It started hitting all of them with texture. And we were like, holy cow, this is just such an exciting whiskey. I'm delighted. There's two things I'm bummed about. One is that we only had 3 barrels of the wheat. So it's we wanted to make a bigger batch, but we were limited to like 2,000, I think it was 2,072 bottles. Whereas our other batches are starting to get up in the 3,500 range. And the other bummer is that like, we just don't have that much of this wheat. It's hard to replicate without really a perfect wheat. But I'm delighted. I'm delighted that people who are in the know with our brand are going to be like, oh, yep, I'm picking that one up. And then they're going to get to experience it. It's exactly what I like about whiskey.
Yeah. That's so cool.
I mean, to me, I don't know if this is and this is why we do so many things blind on our channel, is because I don't know if that I know there's a wheat component in here. I'm in my mind comparing it based on that knowledge plus the proof point. I'm thinking about the Weller full proofs I've tried that I own, or like all the maker's marks that I've tried, the private releases and the special editions that they do.
Yep.
And I don't know if I'm equating it to that because of those reasons, but man, like it is elegant in the way that like some of the best Weller 107 picks I've ever tried are, but it has so much flavor to it. And it's not like, it doesn't have that kind of maker's sour note to it. It doesn't have the Buffalo Trace kind of sickeningly sweet flavor to it. It's just kind of like the Goldilocks.
Yeah.
And you can actually find it. Like
this is danger.
Yeah.
This should come with like a danger label on it.
A warning. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so smooth.
Yeah.
Okay. Real quick.
Can I want to pinpoint this.
Okay.
I mentioned those other ones to say that if you're a fan of weeded bourbon, just buy this one. I'm not here to sell Nick's product. We're here to just
hold up. Even if you're not a fan of weeded bourbon, because I most often hate weeders.
Other than makers
products, I typically hate weeders. This does not taste like a weeder. This tastes just like good. This tastes like goodness.
And I love it. I have not met a Weller Full Proof I didn't like. I'm not 107s are iffy for me. I just like the extra proof that the Weller Full Proof brings.
Yeah.
And we get a lot of picks here in our market, and they're hard to find, but you can still get them. And this is like as it's better than like the best one.
Yeah. I do want to real quick.
I'd rather just buy these.
We have a question that can be answered. If someone can pop the link to the website in the chat, so that way we can highlight.
JG just did.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Awesome.
And then John asked, what are the distribution plans? So you guys are all online right now, right?
No. So we are distributed in, I think it's now 10 states.
Oh, that's right. Because Joe got his from a store in Florida.
Yeah. So we're in Florida.
Right.
We're in Florida. We're going to hit the Florida market slightly later than some of the others. Just logistics right now is like the worst. But basically we're in Florida. We're about to be in Illinois, which we had so many people pushing for Illinois, and we listened, and it was just a matter of time. And then we're from Massachusetts. So like Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island. And then we're out in California. Oregon just reached out to us. It's a control state. And they were just like, hi, we want your product really early on. And we were like, thank you. We don't know how you have any idea who we are. And then we're direct to consumer in like 40 states through our website. But things have been going well at Found North. Yes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone who's buying Found North. This allows us to distribute to more places. So we're making a huge push in 2023 to expand our distribution and get it into more markets in stores, because it's always pricier to buy online and deal with shipping, right? So it's like it'd be great to be able to be in some more stores around the country.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm sure you probably don't ship to Tennessee, huh? Because no one does.
No one ships to Tennessee. We are in discussion with distributors in Tennessee. We're really interested in Tennessee. We've had a big contingent of Tennessee folks who would really like us to be there, and we'd like to be there too. So
on that list of people who would like you to be here.
And I will say this: we are in Tennessee. There aren't many things that I'm willing to go out of my way to use out-of-state connections to secure. This is one of them. So it's a hassle for us to get stuff here. So it's got to be worth it.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah, it is.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. And Robert has a question. Robert, I wanted to let you know we're going to get to your question at the end because I want us to try all of these before we answer your question.
So that's a good reason. Let's go ahead and slide on into 6.
Yeah. And then JB Bourbon asked, does Canadian whiskey use bourbon barrels, or use used bourbon barrels, or new barrels?
Both. Rarely, we've had to put a lot of stuff in new oak. That's something that we're huge fans of new oak, obviously. But it's much more common that they use ex-bourbon, more like sort of the Scotch industry, which I think is kind of a bummer. I'd love to see more Canadian and new oak. Or I guess I should tell them, don't do it because we're doing it and we like it.
At least more for you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is aged 17 years. We've got 87% corn, 12% rye, 1% barley. I mean, again,
it's a
individual
5 whiskey. Yeah, so this one's a 5 whiskey blend. The whiskeys in here range from 17 to 26 years old. It is majority 21 and 26 year. I think like 80% of the whiskey is either 21 or 26 years old. We had so much love for batch 2, and we actually had more of the component that was like the foundation of batch 2. So we aged that for a further 20 months, and we used that as the base of this whiskey. And this is, you want to talk about weight, like when a whiskey has just like weight to it. This is, we think of this as like our heftiest whiskey. It is a heavy whiskey, which is really fun. We had so much positive feedback on 2 that we were like, all right, how do we kind of like do a throwback to that? And this was the whiskey that we built for it.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, I'm sitting here looking at the proof and everything. We're at 64.1%. So
yeah,
128.2.
Oh, wow.
We're corn heavy. This is looking a lot like batch 4. I'm grinning like an idiot over here. I can't wait to get into it.
Oh, this smells pungent.
Oh man.
I was immediately thinking this is a Josh whiskey, not an Aaron whiskey.
Yeah, this smells like, yes, this is a Josh whiskey.
Yeah.
But this might be an Aaron whiskey too. But it smells
hey,
like
no. I don't want to. Yeah, no. You take your time with it and decide.
Sometimes you just want that thunder.
Yeah.
You know?
Josh really, he goes big or he goes home. Like yesterday we made nachos, and the meat that he made, it made me sweat. Like I was wearing my glasses and I was like sweating here. His whole scalp was sweating. Like, and he was like, "Oh, I'm loving it. This is so great." So he likes all the power, all of the thunder, as you say.
Yeah. I like stuff that makes you, whiskey makes you feel something.
What?
And these all do in different ways.
Yeah.
Which is remarkable. I was kind of looking at these early on when we got them in, and I was like, okay, 5 and 6, they've kind of deviated from the previous pattern of like 1 and 3 being more of the rye heavy blend, 2 and 4 being more corn. Then we've got the single barrel, and then now we're back at 5 and 6, and nope, we've switched gears a little bit, kind of, not a ton, but a little. What are you doing?
What did you put in this, Ricky Bobby?
What? Oh, you like it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was watching Aaron's face, and it was delightful.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to catch the rewatch.
Josh, to answer your question, one of the things we love about being able to do batches and is we constantly get to with batches we constantly get to iterate a little bit, right? There's a degree of freedom around that, and with 2 and 4 being kind of an area that's a little underexplored from a whiskey perspective, right? Like, who's making whiskey like this with the high corn rye from Canada at proof? It's not really happening that much. We really were excited to keep sort of dabbling in that area and explore where we could go with this. Whereas with 1 and 3, we had just released the rye, and we're going to keep releasing some of these ryes. And so we felt like it'd be fun to mix it up with batch 5 and insert the wheater, which we've been sitting on, and say like, hey, we're not just going to do, we want you to know, like, stay tuned, because we're going to keep doing fun stuff and we're going to keep changing it up.
I love it.
Yeah.
Keep us on our toes, man.
Yes. Hell yes.
This also, it has power, but it drinks under what the proof is, I feel like.
I only had one sip. I need to get them.
It has power and flavor, but like I would not have guessed it was at this high proof, and that's also dangerous. And I'm gonna compare this against batch 4 right now.
I like that idea. Man, this is like, anybody who loves Kentucky bourbon just needs to get this, because it's sweet, it's caramelly,
but it's not too sweet, because
it's not too sweet.
I wouldn't like it if it was too sweet.
Man,
I think I like this better than batch 4.
Yeah,
no offense. Batch 4 is good, but this is like, This is really good.
So it's funny because like light whiskey was real taboo for a long time, predominant corn or all corn or whatever. But like that's something that in recent years has more and more come into the light with all of like Obtainium light whiskey and, you've got those. And then they are what they are, right? Like Obtainium is a great product. And then you get, like in our market, we had some Obtainiums drop that were like 26 years or 23, 26 years old for $300. And I'm trying to remember, I can't remember if they were single barrels or if they were a blend or not. But like you guys are taking these components that kind of people don't really know about or haven't really heard about, and Stacy's saying exactly my point right now in a much more concise way. And
Josh likes to use a lot of words.
Yeah. And it's you're taking these components that people kind of don't know about or are just vaguely familiar with, and you're putting them together in a way. And again, I mean, that's the nerd in me just absolutely loving what you're doing.
Yeah.
I like, so it's funny because language matters, and I think the term we've been asked before, it's like, oh, so your component is light whiskey. And look, there's a reason why I say component, because the term light whiskey, it's just a bad term. It just has negative connotation. Who wants to drink a light whiskey?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and
it almost gives a connotation of diet to me.
Of diet, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, if you look at the history of light whiskey was something that was marketed in the 70s. One of the big companies that marketed it was Four Roses. And they have, if you want to look up some funny advertisements, look up 70s light whiskey Four Roses ads. They are the least compelling ads of all time. I just, you can't imagine wanting to drink this stuff. But these whiskey distilleries were having a really hard time keeping up with vodka and gin, which were coming onto the market. They were really, really mild. You could mix them with whatever fruit juice you wanted. And it was cheap because you didn't have to age it. And so they started making this style of whiskey where they were distilling it to a higher ABV. And then of course, watering it down like crazy to 35% and marketing it as quote unquote light whiskey. And is anyone surprised it didn't work? And yet they continue to use this term for these higher proof corn components. And it's just like, can you please, like, it's not made that way anymore. Can we give it a different name? And of course, the Canadians call it base whiskey, which sounds just as stupid. So for us, it's like, look, these aren't categories in and of themselves because we never bottle it that way, right? This is a piece of a puzzle that we're creating, right? It is an aspect of the whiskey more so than some poorly named category of whiskey. And I think it would do, people have gotten to the point where honestly, the biggest blessing for us is that the whiskey consumer is incredibly discerning now. 6 or 7 years ago when I was selling whiskey, our whiskey wouldn't have been able to overcome the just some of the hurdles that it has to overcome. Not because the whiskey wouldn't have been good back then, but because the consumer wasn't nearly as thoughtful and open-minded as the consumer is now. I really believe that whiskey drinkers are a lot less wed to category and they're much more wed to best practices, right? You keep saying craftsmanship. I care about craftsmanship. If this was, whiskey from some other country or whatever it was, and it tasted like this, you would still like it because you care about the craft of it and you care about how it tastes. And thank goodness there are so many whiskey drinkers like you who are like, you know what? If they're making it the right way, I'm really interested.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, can we just get some new terms, please?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you as a business have to fight against all the stigma and all the preconceived notions as to what people would be getting with those types of products labeled that way, you know. And
I have to say real quick that this is making my lips tingle in the best possible way.
And she's getting more.
And I'm going to pour myself a little bit more.
So I will say, I saw this on the bottle, you know, what the components were. It made me think about batch 4, and I was like, there's no way it's going to be better than batch 4. And I just tried them back to back, and I actually think I do like batch 6 better.
Whew.
It's batch 4 has a more dominant, like it takes over your mouth a little bit more.
Batch 4 is a powerhouse.
Yeah.
100%.
Batch 4 is a literal punch right in the tongue. But batch 6 is like a polished batch 4. But the finish.
Polished punch.
The finish
it's
on
a very
batch
well-trained
6,
fighter.
The finish on batch 6 is like an elephant just sat down in your esophagus. And like, it settles in, man. I took a sip of batch 4 and I waited a few minutes, and then I took a sip of batch 6. And the finish, and batch 4 is not slacking on finish by any means. Not. The finish on batch 6 is stupid.
Well, I will say it's making my lips tingle, and I feel like I have like a lip plumper on right now.
There you go.
As a woman, I know most of our audience is like,
so guys or ladies in the chat,
98% men, but
plump lips, there you go.
It makes me feel like my lips are very plump because they're
Hey, that's good. No, that's awesome. I love hearing that, and I think it's for us. It's funny because batch 2 was a 3 whiskey blend, batch 4 was a 4 whiskey blend, and batch 6 was a 5 whiskey blend, and that seems like a slight difference, right? It's like, okay, it's one more whiskey, but when you're blending, when you add another whiskey to the blend, it messes with all of the dials of the other whiskeys. So the more whiskeys there are, the harder it is to blend. But the more opportunity there is for dynamism, right? You really get to like mess with it. And I think you risk getting a little muddled from a flavor standpoint, but we felt really good about this whiskey, and we felt really excited about it in terms of we feel really good about it in terms of like that this is the next iteration of this sort of series that we've been working on.
Yeah.
That's great,
man. You guys are killing it.
Yeah,
I freaking love it, man.
Yeah, it's great.
And
we're gonna answer some questions.
Yeah,
yes?
I want to be clear. Like, you know, we just brought Nick on because we freaking love his whiskey, and that's it. We wanted you guys to know about it because we got our eyes open to it
accidentally on a blind sample swap.
Yeah, because of Joe and Jess in the chat bringing it to our attention. Yep. So, you know, this is one of the things that in every hobby I've ever been involved in, you know, who doesn't love the legacy distilleries, or if it's, you know, I mean, a million other hobbies I've been a part of and love a ton. Everybody loves the stalwarts that you hear about all the time, but everybody knows about those. So like, let's make it interesting. Let's find something new that's happening. Let's find, you know, it's the same thing in sports in the underdog story. It's like, let's key in on these people who are doing something that's a little bit different, that makes it interesting, that can kind of expand the hobby for you. And I mean, that's what Joe and Jess did for us. And I was like, you know, by God, we got this platform.
And we would love to do it for everyone on our channel. Yeah. So
like, you guys, like Nick is on here because we've tried this whiskey completely blind and it blew us away. So that blind flight opened my eyes, and I was like, I got to tell everybody I know about this. So I mean, that's just the way it is, man. That's why we're sitting here right now. And that's as personable and as fun as it is to hang out with you. Those are all great things. But
yeah, I think you and Josh need to like hang out in real life because you guys would talk forever.
Seriously, I'm game. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you know, like the whiskey's like, it's good. Like, it's just flat out. It's not even good. It's great, to be honest with you. Like, this is some of my favorite stuff, and you just can't.
All right.
Nobody. Okay. Anyways,
you guys stop talking.
Go to the questions.
I love you, but be quiet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to highlight. I wanted to highlight why we're here.
Yeah.
We're not here. We're not here because Nick reached out to us and he's like, "Hey, man, I want to promote my company."
We reached out to him.
And we're here because. Yes. That's why. That's why.
So Robert asked, if he were to try one bottle to determine a taste profile, which one should he buy?
Oh man, that's tough. Yeah.
I think I've got an answer, but
man.
Yeah, it's tough.
I think it might. I think it's hard, right? Because we've done 2 ryes, a wheater, and then these three sort of corn expressions, and then the single barrel rye. And they're they're a little bit disparate, right? It's not like a distillery where it's like, oh, we have one style of whiskey that we make and that's our style, right? We're not like Wild Turkey. As much as I love Wild Turkey, it's not like Wild Turkey where it's a different shade of the same color. You know what I mean? I guess if you had to pick one, I think if you had to pick one, it would probably be batch 4. Is my guess. In large part because batch 4 is predominantly it's built around the Hungarian oak component, which by chance happens to be the whiskey that the wood maturation style that we've been most drawn to, and have used in a bunch of our more recent expressions. It's in 3, 4, and 6. But honestly, I would say if you really want to just get an idea of what we're about in terms of exploring what whiskey can be, I would go with batch 5. Honestly, like batch 5 is going to be, batch 5 will be differentiated from the other batches in terms of just straight up taste profile. But I think for us, we are such texture hounds, and the texture aspect of batch 5 is just, I think it's just unmatched with anything we've made so far.
Yeah.
Awesome. I like it.
I like Kim's question.
Kim asked, when will batch 5 and 6 be available on your website? I think
tomorrow.
Tomorrow. There you go, Kim. Get at it, girl. Yeah. Kim will probably be getting it because she knows her stuff.
Yeah, and honestly, like if you go to our website and you join our mailing list, we release information. We are probably, to our detriment, send the fewest emails of any company you've ever signed up for. We send like 3 emails a year. We only send emails out when we're announcing important shit. Like, it's like, hey, this is available. Hey, you can buy this right now. Like, that's basically all we do.
Yeah.
And we have a holiday release that's a secret release that's coming out that is going to be bonkers. But also you'll get notified when like 5 and 6 are available, things like that.
Okay. There you go.
Okay.
Let's see if we have any more questions.
Yeah, and I was going to say, echoing that question that Robert asked, I was wondering what Nick was going to say, because I was feeling like batch 4 might have been the answer, because it's like this dividing line. Because if you try that and you love the proof, then it's like, okay, I need to get batch 6 too. Or if you get batch 6 and you can find a batch 4 somewhere. Whereas like if you're like, okay, this is proof heavy, it's good, but I don't know if I like the proof, then I can go for 3 or 5.
I agree. Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
I agree. However, for me, so we had batch 4 in a blind recently. And for whatever reason, I don't remember what we had it against. It was
it was by itself. You just weren't feeling proof.
I wasn't feeling proof that night.
4 is a me batch.
4 is a Josh batch.
Yeah.
But even if you're like, if you don't like the proof, let's say batch 4 is too proofy for you, even though batch 6 is technically very proofy, it doesn't taste as proofy.
It settles in like a really high proof, but it doesn't assault your palate.
It doesn't assault your palate like a high proof does. Yeah.
It's very well-rounded. No spiky edges.
Which is what I tend to like. When I drink a high proof, I want something that is very well-rounded, high proof. Yeah.
A ton of sweetness. Honestly, think with 5 and 6 dropping and those being available to most states, I would really, to me, it would come down, I think, to, I like what you're saying, Nick. I'm going to speak for you and your company here. I like what you're saying about batch 5 being like the thing that it kind of showcases what you guys can do.
I like batch 5.
For me, it would come down to, are you like a Weller 107, Weller foolproof type of person? Buy batch 5. If you're more of like a Stag Junior,
I disagree.
but
go on.
If you're more on the weeders, like batch 5 is, you're in for an absolute treat. And then if you like the high proof, heavy hug, all that stuff, then batch 6 is, it's got all that sweetness. If you've ever had any of the Bardstown blends that have 100% corn whiskey in it, there's that certain level of sweetness. And that isn't for everybody, but I love it. I just absolutely love it. And I mean, I think that this stuff right here, batch 6 for me is the winner of the night.
Well, here's what I say about batch 5 is that you're calling it like the weeder, but it's missing that off-putting funk.
You get a funky note
that I don't like in some
weeders.
Some
weeders.
I know exactly
that's not
what
in
you're
here.
talking about. Yeah, that's so funny because I'm hit or miss with weeders.
Yeah.
I love Weller. Who doesn't like Weller? I mean, honestly, Weller and frankly, like you want to throw it back, Stitzel-Weller. I can remember tasting Michter's 2013 single barrel 20-year-old Stitzel-Weller juice the first time I ever had it. Like I can remember the way it felt. I can remember the way it smelled. Like that was an experience. That was a lifetime experience, right? But on the other hand, I've had plenty of weeders where I'm just like, there's the sour. You keep saying it's a sort of sour note. I know what you mean. It's off-putting. And if that were present in 5, we wouldn't have made it. Honestly, like I don't like that note. I really don't like that note. So I know what you mean. It's not there, but it does. The butteriness is what reminds me of Weller whiskeys. That kind of just and it's weird. It's almost like the absence of rye, right? Because when we drink a bourbon that's rye, we expect a rye. And when we drink a wheated bourbon, there's like, oh, that rye isn't there. With this one, there is still a spice component that you might expect in rye. And so I get the like, hey, there's this butteriness that reminds you of Weller. It reminds you of the weeders that we like. But there is still a spice component that I find to be particularly unusual in weeders that I absolutely adore about batch 5. And I think that's why I'm so obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
really like it.
I went back to 5 and it hit me again, that spice component. And that's a perfect way to put it. That's what's so often lacking in some weeders, that I like something to balance out the sweetness. Like I like it a little sweet and spicy. And there's like this kind of a cinnamony type of note on it. It hits mid palate and just carries through to the finish. And it's not sharp. It's not prickly. It just exists back there, and it balances out the sweetness that you're getting in such a beautiful way.
Well, and if I were to smell this and taste this blind, I would never guess that this is a weeder.
Yeah.
Never.
I won't say the distillery because I really shouldn't burn distilleries, but I was at a distillery once and I asked about their weeder, and I said, what do you like about working with wheat? And they said the wheat gets out of the way of the corn. And I thought that was the most ass backwards way of thinking about wheat. It was very much that like, it just makes it sweeter, right? It just, and I was like, if that's how you're treating your wheat component, why is it even there, right? Like what's the point? And so I do like to have that little bit of, that's why I like the minty, the kind of almost spearmint mintiness. I also get like a hint of leather in batch 5 that reminds me of, or almost like tobacco, that reminds me of rye, which is slightly off when you're expecting a weeder to just get out of the way of corn, right?
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude. Yeah.
That's crazy.
That last sip I had of batch 5, I'm gonna have just a little smidge more.
Yeah. And I'm just checking time.
Yeah.
We got time for just a couple more questions if anyone has any more questions.
Yeah.
Aaron does have to be in bed by 10 p.m. Central Time. So
I woke up this morning, I didn't even know like Tennessee's trying to say they're not doing daylight savings time.
They are.
Or they said they weren't doing it, but then this morning my clock switched and I was like, oh, so we're doing it now. And then Aaron's like, oh no, they're gonna do it next year. And I'm like, man, this is a mess. Like, I'm thinking about tonight. I'm like, wait, how are we going to keep up with what states are doing it? Which ones aren't? Like, Arizona's on their own island up until now. Like,
yeah,
I can keep up with them, but if we're all over the place, let's get it together. But yeah, dude, again, you guys were such a pleasant surprise for me to find.
Mm-hmm.
And again, big shout out to Joe and Jess Carter in the chat for putting you on our radar.
And if someone else could just pop the website link in the chat one more time, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Because these are dropping tomorrow. And like I said, if you have to get one or the other, if you can't get both and you're a Weller Makers fan, I think go 5. Oh. That's just my opinion.
Here's a good question. So which batch packs the most vanilla? 5.
That's a good question.
I could see that.
I think it's 5. Honestly, it was the single barrel. The single barrel one packs the most. I hate saying that because it's obviously gone. But yeah, the we will release Rise, and if you see our single barrels in the wild, hunt them down. I think the fun thing about the really fun thing about the single barrel program is we didn't release for stores a single barrel. There isn't a Found North single barrel that you can just go out and buy. So if you see and we did a different bottle. So we did the sort of, right. We did like
the squatty bottle,
the tall bottles for our batches, and the squatty bottle for the single barrel. And the point literally was, if you walk into a store and you see that they have one, you know that that's unusual, which I thought was we thought that was fun. I don't know if anybody, other people might think it's ridiculous, but for us, it was like, hey, there are a handful of these that are going to be out in the wild at stores around the country, at clubs. And that sounds like I'm saying it's at dance clubs. No, at like whiskey clubs, right?
Yeah.
If you can get bottle service at your local dance club and it's Found North, you hit the jackpot. No, but it's. I think that's a fun aspect of our single barrel because it really did throw a lot of vanilla.
Yeah, I agree. The single barrel has a lot of vanilla, especially on the nose.
That was my first. As soon as I saw JB's question, I was like, oh yeah, the single barrel. But then going back to batch 5. Vanilla bean, just like straight up vanilla bean ice cream on batch 5, specifically vanilla bean, not French vanilla.
Yeah.
Not regular vanilla, like vanilla bean.
Yeah. I feel you.
Yeah. I want this with some dark chocolate. Like, oh, make my night. Oh, yes. All right.
My ruler of good whiskey is if I can eat it with beef jerky. I know that sounds dumb, but I've had it before now, and I never want to have it without beef jerky again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good.
Well, and like, one of the wild things too is I would say before we had a channel and I would watch other channels and things like that. And you think like, okay, like they're, if somebody has somebody on, like, of course it's probably going to be positive and all this. What am I liking about 6? Start that. I'm going to come back to that.
Okay.
Like you think it's the same thing when people are looking at website reviews and they're like, oh, I don't see them say anything negative about this person or this brand, or they never release negative reviews. Well, why waste the time? Why put your time, effort, and energy to disparage somebody? Like, use the space that you have to promote things that are good and like showcase things that you like and you enjoy. And that's why having you on tonight, it was just like, yeah, this makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And I'm stunned. Like, we're sitting here drinking through 5 different samples. You would expect that 1, maybe even 2 wouldn't be quite to my palate or whatever, especially with like more of the rye heavy blends. And it's like, no, they're like, I'm not mad at any of these.
That's because they have some flavor. They have flavor, and they have like staying power, and that's what you like.
And then, again, that's a testament to the craftsmanship. Yeah. I mean, it's just this is what it's about. Like, this is how you. And like, I'm kind of a business nerd too. So like, this is textbook differentiating yourself in the market and offering something that nobody else is doing. Yep. And it's, like, if you came to me and you're like, hey, I think I'm going to go get a bunch of Canadian whiskey components and blend them together and release them at cask strength. What? Like, that doesn't even, nobody's doing that. That doesn't even make any sense, Nick. What are you talking about? And then you do it like this, and it's like, all right, well,
All
dang.
right.
All right, you got me, man.
Someone's got egg on his face, and it's not him.
I appreciate that. I think the for us, one of the big questions we always get is, why didn't you guys? You're Americans. Why didn't you just go to MGP? It's like the most. It's just like the most obvious kind of first question we get, and I've got a shelf full of MGP whiskeys. I love MGP. Like, don't get me wrong, I am a big fan. But there are two things. One, like, you don't want to be the last dog to the bull, right? Like, you don't want to be picking over the stuff that's already been picked over. It's just not a fun place to be, and to be charging more for it, right? It's like, but the other thing is, I would rather make really good whiskey and have people discover it and have people get over the fact that it's from Canada than make lesser whiskey that's more expensive that has the right provenance. You know what I mean? That has the right that's on trend. You know, oh well, this is on trend, so I'm gonna buy it. And it's like, why don't we just make something that's good?
Yeah.
That's it.
What a novel concept.
Absolutely crazy.
How dare
concept.
you, Nick?
I know. How dare I? I don't know. I don't even know.
All right, let's hit a couple of these last questions, and then we'll get out of here, guys. You know how we do. We're out by 10 for sure, our time. What am I liking about 6? So it is very reminiscent to me of like a very sweet forward bourbon, like a nice caramel sweet forward bourbon. You know, it kind of puts into my mind some visions of like a Stag Junior or like a Discovery Batch 7. I know, no, this is different because you don't like Stag Junior. I'm saying it has that level of sweet forwardness to it, but there's dark elements that are interlaced in there. That
anchor it.
Right. It's not just all sweet, and then the finish is just for freaking ever. Like the finish just goes on and on. So if you like dark, like for instance, me, I like Stag Junior, I like ECBP, I like those types of pours. That's what attracts me to whiskey. Like that's when I want something, I want big flavor, big finish. Yeah. Batch 6 has all that.
And JB Bourbon, I know you didn't specifically ask me, you asked Josh, but
it's pot.
Don't like Stag Junior. But what I like about this is different from what Josh likes about it. I like because it's balanced. It is very high proof, and it is not blowing my face off with offensiveness. Like it's flavorful.
It's not sharp.
It's flavorful and it coats my palate, but I don't feel like
assaulted.
Yeah. So we both like it, even though I don't like Stag Junior. You equate it to similar to that, but I would not. So it's different, but it's good.
Yeah.
And then Jeffrey asked, Aaron, teriyaki or pepper beef jerky? 100% teriyaki. All day, every day. Pepper is fine, guys. But teriyaki is my jam. So.
Pepper, just original, and then teriyaki.
All right.
Whoa.
Gosh,
I like the spice, man. Yeah. I like that spice.
So I think we need to let Nick go. We've got a couple more questions, but they're more for us.
Yeah, and we've got before we get out of here tonight, we'll fill you guys in on kind of some future plans of the channel and future live streams that we've got coming up. So we're doing things a little differently this month. But Nick, cannot thank you enough for being on, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for making fan-freaking-tastic whiskey. Yeah, first and foremost. Let's forget you even being on this stream.
And also, I want to be like the creator of a bromance. Are you ever coming to Nashville, Tennessee? Because if so, you need to.
I am now.
Hang out. I will approve this relationship.
I love Nashville.
Do you like food?
Yeah.
I love Nashville. No, honestly, like Nashville. I'm a huge fan of Nashville. It's an excuse. I can expense it now. I can come see you and expense a trip with my wife down to Nashville. That's the way to go. That's the way to go.
Yeah, you guys have me just email. Let's make it happen.
Thank you guys
I approve. You have my approval, so make it
happen. I've had so much fun. I honestly, you guys have a You have a great way of taking whiskey seriously and having fun with it at the same time. I just think that's wonderful. There's just too much like, oh, it's so fun to geek out and it's fun to care. Like I hate that it's either care or take it too seriously. You can take it seriously and still have fun. You know what I mean? And you guys just nailed that. I had so much fun tonight. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Super happy that you were able to do this. And
And great. You guys have a great audience. Holy cow. So many good questions. I usually just get a lot of lousy questions. It was fun to have such a really thoughtful, engaged audience. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yep. We'll talk soon, Nick.
Yep.
Thanks
Yeah,
again,
please. Yeah. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Talk later.
Guys, that was so fun. Hopefully you guys had a good time. I know we had a good time. I know we got to drink the whiskey, so that's a little bit of a, it's a perk. It's a perk. Let's call it what it is. Yep. But it was a super good time. I seriously love the craftsmanship. Yep. And again, that's why we wanted to do this tonight, because we didn't know.
I have a question. Question was asked of me because people actually care about what I have to say. Yeah. Don't know why, but so favorite, I liked a lot of them. For my everyday drinker, even though I don't drink every day, I would say batch 3 because that's a very Aaron whiskey, approachable. I don't know what the proof
rye forward.
So that would be
like one.
That's like a pair of jeans.
It's math. It's like 110.2.
Like you could wear it all the time. You could drink it all the time. So batch 3 is a good like every day. I think the ones I was the most surprised about were batch 5 and 6.
I agree.
So batch 5, because I typically don't like wheater bourbons, but because they blend things after it's been already kind of like, it's not a mash bill, it's a blend ratio. It's a wheater per se, but the ratios just work out where it's very nice. So
that's good blending for you.
Yeah.
And I think I'll say, you didn't ask me this, JB, but I'll answer anyways. I think my answer is the same. Like there's this tendency in the whiskey space to be very nostalgic about what has gone by and what you may not be able to get anymore. And you see that on secondary market values of things where things just go crazy through the roof. And 3 is outstanding for a rye forward whiskey. And I'm not a big rye guy, but it has so much sweetness to balance it out.
Yeah, it doesn't taste like a rye whiskey to me.
It does, though. The rye grain is presented in such a beautiful way.
I don't know. I just
with some sweetness to accompany it. Whereas, and there's none of that like black licorice, star anise type of stuff that I just can't get behind. Correct. It's the beautiful rye grain with blanket sweetness on top. 4 is just a powerhouse. I absolutely love that thing. And I just didn't think the new batches would be able to be better than 4 for me. But the single barrel makes me super excited.
Single barrel is amazing, and I don't want to talk about it too much because you can't get this specific single barrel again. But when they do other single barrels, if you are able to get it, I would suggest trying to get it.
And then 5 and 6, I mean, just I'm legitimately surprised. I thought they would be good, but I just didn't think they would be better than 4 because I love it so much. And here we are. So
yep. Mike said something about, I think Josh needs to figure out if he likes watches in photography.
Oh, is he referencing my stuff in watches Instagram account?
Oh, maybe. So yeah, Josh is a hobby collector. Yeah. Let me give you a backstory. Josh is a hobby collector, and we're going to keep this short. Josh is a hobby collector. He loves watches. He has always loved watches, but he's also loved photography. And at some point he combined watches and photography together where he took pictures of watches. And he has an Instagram account called Stuff and Watches, which is how we named this channel Stuff and Whiskey, because we're very original. And but
I don't take any of it too seriously. So.
You don't. And there was a point in time where he had built that Instagram account up. Then you kind of lost interest in it. Then we started dating and you got rejuvenated. You built it back up again. And then now we're into Stuff and Whiskey. And so it's taking too much of his time. So he's not too much on Stuff and Watches.
Yeah, I'll get back to that, the Stuff and Watches stuff at some point. Yep. I do want to highlight this, though. And this is a testament to having Nick on. In the watch space, I like all the legacy brands of watches. Like I like the Rolex and the Omega and the Pateks and the Audemars. I like all those watches a lot. But But the watches that get me the most excited are the ones that are the new and up and coming brands that are doing something fresh and new, that are different. They're not just rehashing the same old thing that's been done time and time again.
Yep.
And like, I've reached out to some of those watch companies and started talking to them about potentially doing some stuff with them, because I want to
our channel doing stuff with them.
Our channel, me personally, like, I want to use the platform I've been given and the knowledge and whatever skill set I have with videography and photography to be able to highlight these types of brands that are doing big things that you may not have heard about.
Yeah.
Because that's, if nobody talks about these brands, then nobody's going to know about them. But when you're doing such good work, that's just, I don't know. I feel like you can't ignore it. And if you have a platform, you should be speaking to it. Yeah. So that's what we're here to do.
So JB Bourbon says, so 3 for Aaron, 6 for Josh, and Nick tells me to get 6. I'm about to be broke. Yeah, I would get 3. Man. I would get 3 and 6. I would personally, even though 3 I would call an everyday drinker, 6 is also very delicious.
3 if you like Kentucky Rye, 4 if you like high proof Kentucky bourbon, 5 if you like wheated bourbon.
Also, if you don't like wheated bourbon, because I don't like wheated bourbon,
but you're rare in how much you detest wheated bourbon.
I detest wheated bourbon,
and you like 5
except for Maker's products and Batch 5.
And then 6, and again 6 if you like. If you like, 6 is like, to me, a polished version of 4 with a longer finish, which sounds stupid that they even pulled that off, but here we are.
Okay, so we'll do 2 more questions, and then we gotta cap it because it's after 10. So Mike asked if you have seen Mash and Drum's new prom watch that he has using barrel
promotion watch. Yeah.
Oh, I'm like, what's that?
Original grain. Yeah. So from an aesthetic standpoint, original grain is great if you like the bourbon barrel, all that stuff. I'm a mechanical watch nerd. Like, I like the actual mechanical movements, like all of that's in there. So I don't really mess around with too many quartz watches. So original grain is not my speed. From an aesthetic standpoint, they do look awesome. Watch. I know you do, but from an aesthetic standpoint, they look cool. But when I go with quartz watches, I just think like Casio and G-Shocks and things like that. So, but I like the mechanical watches. So they're not quite my original grains. Reached out to sponsor us as well, and it's not. Even though I like what they do, it's not what I would wear, because I like to be able to hold it up and hear the tick, 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 tick. I like to feel like I have a heartbeat on my wrist.
Yeah.
And so we're not going to work with any sponsors that we ourselves would not promote. Not to say that original grain's bad. Their watches are great.
Yeah.
It's just not for me, because
it may be more for me than for you, because I'm too lazy to have a mechanical watch.
Right.
Just keeping it real.
Right. So I'm just being real with you guys about how I feel about, and I mean, this is again a testament to having Nick on tonight. Like, we drank some Z-Biotics before this, and they want to do some stuff with us, and I'm like, we're gonna try. We gotta know product. We gotta know if it's a good fit. Like,
we're at a point, I think, in the channel where we have people reaching out to us, and we're going to be very selective about what sponsorship opportunities we choose, because they have to be true to us. Because this is not, we have full-time day jobs. This is not how we pay our bills. So this is something that we do for fun, and we want to keep it true to us. And because you guys come to us because we're us, and we don't want to be anything else.
Right. And you guys, if you tune in here, we want you to know that you're watching us. If you're watching us, if we say we like something, we want you to know it's legit.
Correct. Yep.
And that's like,
so we'll let you know about the Z-Biotics.
It's not like Z-Biotics is like, it's a great product. Like, somebody told me it tasted nasty. It doesn't taste nasty. No. It just tastes kind of fine. It's you're not drinking it for enjoyment. You're just drinking it to feel better the next day. And I appreciate the science behind it and all. It's gonna have to blow me away, because like I gotta, because
we're old.
It's gotta blow me away like Found North Batch 3 and 4 blew me away.
Drinking hits us a lot harder now that we're older.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great note to end on.
Yeah. Oh, no. It's not.
We got questions.
No. I completely forgot. We got to tell people we're doing 2 streams this month.
Oh, that's right.
So this one was going to be our stream, but then it worked out schedule wise so that we could get together with Nick. And then after that, we're like, oh, well, it's your birthday month. Like, we got to do a birthday live stream. So then we're like, okay, well, so now we're going to go. So Aaron's birthday is November the 22nd.
It is.
And so happens to be Sunday, November the 20th. We're going to go on and do a live stream for Aaron's birthday. So we'll do, I'm sure, some kind of giveaway. We're going to drink whatever Aaron tells me we're going to drink. Yeah, it's going to be a good time. Yep. So you guys will see it. We'll post about it. You know, you'll see the banner pop up.
We'll do
There's
it.
no telling what she's going to do with the thumbnail.
I'll have to make the thumbnail at some point.
Yeah. We'll see how much she's willing to embarrass herself.
Not at all.
Yeah.
I'm against that.
But all right, guys, this was a great time. Hopefully you enjoyed Nick being on. Man, we wouldn't have even had him on if it wasn't for the fantastic whiskey and what they're doing with their company. That's you're going to see a little bit more of that in Stuff and Whiskey going forward. Like, we want to use the platform we have to highlight people who are doing good things, doing big things, and doing different things. Yep. So hopefully you guys enjoy it.
Yeah.
We're going to be here. We're going to keep doing what's true to us, and that's all we can do.
Yep. Until then, we'll see you guys next time.
Yep. We're going to raise our glasses to you guys. Thanks again for 7,500 subscribers. Let's go ahead and get to 10K sooner rather than later. But you know what? Honestly, we'll grow at whatever rate we grow. Yeah. We're just happy to be a part of this and happy you guys are here.
Happy to be part of the community. And thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for all that you do for us. We really do appreciate you. So it does not go unnoticed.
Yep. So, all right. Love you guys.
Thanks.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.